TNKR Media.
You're taking the hard way out in a way.
Exactly, and
Yeah.
that's what we decided to do. So, like, we decided to grow vinifera in Quebec, do it organically, biodynamically, and not add anything to the wines. Well, I think that does add a lot of stress to it, but
Yeah. Now you're paying the price.
there's a lot of satisfaction to it too, and it's so much fun. I love them.
We're back on the Salt Lake podcast. It's been beautiful. The weather is fantastic. The garden looks good. I'd even say that I might even have to water the garden today. Vineyard looks fine. We're de-leafing right now. Are you still de-leafing, Mike?
Yeah, we've got about a week to go.
So that's Mike Marler from Les Pervenches. Mike Marler and Les Pervenches is celebrating their 25th anniversary. Have you met Mike, Lesley?
Good morning, guys. No, I have not met Mike. I've heard much about Mike from many different people, but we've never met.
So Mike Marler is a dad, a husband, and a legend in the wine industry. 25 years, which is something to be said. And, it's 25 years of also, vinifera. There's Céval planted in your vineyard, of course. But I think you're best known for Super Northern Chardonnay.
David, you have to explain to people again what vinifera, because not everybody knows. I think in a past podcast we explained it, but just in case.
Vinifera is, the classic European grape varieties, the ones that that you remember, that you love: Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, Gewürztraminer, Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, and the list goes on and on and on. But those are kind of like, the top of the food chain. Then there's hybrid grape varieties. There's rustic and semi-rustic. Here in Quebec, I believe early on, a lot of the vineyards were planted with hybrid grapes. Céval is a big one here in the province of Quebec, made famous perhaps at that time by L'Orpailleur, invested a lot in the production of Céval grapes. So Céval is a hybrid grape, but still needs to be covered. Is it considered, Mike, a semi-rustic?
Yeah, that's what I'd call it.
Semi-rustic?
Yeah.
And then before Céval, was there other grape varieties planted in Quebec?
Oh yeah, I guess Céval was the biggest because, as you said, L'Orpailleur had them. But when we were there, there was a lot of Sainte Croix when we were starting. There was a lot of Vidal. There was Chancelard, Foch.
So the difference in the hybrids between semi-rustic and rustic would basically mean that the rustic, we do not have to apply winter protection to them. And we've talked about that on the podcast before. When we talk about winter protection, the vines have to either be hilled up, covered in hay, or maybe a geotextile blanket. I remember when I worked at L'Orpailleur when I was a kid, a long time ago, we used to put an empty bucket on every vine, right? So the whole vineyard basically had a 16-liter bucket upside down on every vine as the winter production. So, it's kind of incredible. I believe at that time they must have had 20,000 vines, and that's 20,000 upside down buckets in the vineyard. It's kind of crazy if you think about it, but it was pretty effective and it worked. And so again, Mike has Céval planted, which is a semi-rustic hybrid, and that needs winter protection as well. So when growing Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Blanc Frankish, you grow Zweigelt, I believe, as well. Those vines all need pretty intense winter protection up here. Did we answer that question?
Yeah. I just got back from the Okanagan Valley, and of course the big topic there is the 2024 freeze. And I really learned something. So for anybody interested in Canadian winemaking, there's always the winter situation. And we always think of the Okanagan, when I was there, it was 40 degrees every day. It's a desert. But they had I didn't really know what it was all about. So we hear all these rumors. And what the situation was that they got a massive freeze in January. And so they lost all their fruit. So I just wondering if you guys could talk a little bit for people. What they had was minus 27 degrees for 3 days in a row, and then it went up to 8 degrees. And so they lost a lot of vines, but they really lost a lot of fruit. So
you want to explain that, Mike?
Because it's a very
death
different
zone.
Like European freezing or European problems often come. It can come any time of year, but it's that big March situation, and then it freezes after the. But this was interesting to me because it was freezing in January. So can you explain a little bit why Canadian winemakers face this situation with the freeze, the buds, development, etc.
Yeah, I can talk a bit about that. I'm not a pro, but I guess I know a little bit. Well, the first thing I heard was you said minus 27. So there's every variety has a limit of what they can take, which is a temperature that if you get there, the primary bud will freeze, and that will take the fruit away. So I hear minus 27, well, most viniferas can't handle minus 27. So if we had a minus 27, probably without any like prior warmth or warmth after or any crazy type of up and down of temperature, it would probably be enough to at least knock out the fruit for the following year, the primary bud. I think you talked about that on a podcast before. So there are 3 buds in the bud, and the primary bud is the one that gives the quality fruit. And at minus 27, for sure, it's gonna be burnt on a vinifera, which was what the Okanagan was mostly or is mostly planted to. If we do talk about hybrids quickly, for example, semi-rustique, they can probably handle a little bit colder than vinifera, but not the minus 30s that what we call the rustiques can. What else can we say? You could also have problems having a cold snap early in the fall because it takes time for those buds that we were just talking about to actually get ready for winter. So yeah, I think also in the Okanagan, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, they had hit too, which was a cold snap sort of in November after a kind of warm fall, and that can do it too. So at that point, we're not talking about their minimum temperature because they're not, the minimum temperature that they can survive is kind of midwinter. And then that temperature goes up in the spring slowly and goes down slowly in the fall. So you can get hit early in the fall or late in the fall or early in the spring without hitting those critical temperatures of minus 27, 26, depending on each variety. So
how are you at Les Pervenches protecting your vines? So we were talking about at the beginning, and I know that David uses the hugely expensive geothermal textiles. Blankets, geotextiles. So what are you guys doing? Because people would bury them, like you were saying, David, hilling. Did you call it hilling?
Hilling up, yeah.
Hilling up. So
it's common in Ontario. See that a lot in Niagara or Prince Edward County, especially, where they basically take out a big V blade attached behind the tractor, and they come down the middle of the row and they just throw a ton of dirt over the vine. And as they're doing that, there's also a couple of staff basically making sure that the long canes, the good canes, the fruit producing canes for next year are also under the ground as well.
That doesn't inhibit the development of any of these buds or anything? Doesn't damage the plant?
You know what you're doing basically with the geotextile is you're putting a little sweater on. Right. It's like you don't want to be outside bare chested, right. In the winter, but sometimes with just a little sweater on, it makes it a lot less. So bringing the vine structure down to the ground, and Mike pioneering basically. A lot of people do his method. And it's very expensive what Mike does, I believe. I think I spoke about it with your wife, who's Mike's partner in his business. A very important part of Les Pervenches, Vero. There is a cost to, buying hay and putting hay down. How many days does that take you to do? And is there what is the cost real?
Well, the cost is real, of course, because I have hay and we do our own hay, make our own hay, but we could sell that hay. So and hays can be quite expensive. But yeah, there's a cost. There's a time cost to it. But let's move back. We're talking about you did say it's been around for 25 years. So when we first bought the vineyard, it was planted half in Chardonnay and half in Céval. There was a few other varieties too, but our goal was, Véronique and I, was to get those Chardonnays to produce. So you talked about cost, but in our minds, we didn't care about the cost. We just wanted to figure out how to grow Chardonnay in Quebec.
I just want one thing though, because you're talking about it, and I want you to answer it now because we could just dwell a second. Who else was growing Chardonnay then?
Right.
And who are these people that had planted Chardonnay there?
So Monachon, Yves Monachon was a Savoyard, fils de vigneron, so a grower's son who I think his older brother got the vineyard, and he came to Quebec and married a Quebecer and planted Les Pervenches in 1991 and planted Chardonnay there.
It was the only place.
I think Charles-Henri planted Chardonnay too. Yeah, and they ripped it out.
What about people like Dietrich Jost? Like, do you think he planted Chardonnay?
Yeah, he had vinifera, probably not in the same size piece of land that Yves had done at Les Pervenches. It was a whole half hectare of Chardonnay. Definitely. Dietrich had been trying lots of things, and he believed too that he actually told Yves that if you plant Chardonnay or Pinot Gris or any of those northern varieties, they'll work. If you can get them to survive through winter, they will ripen and make great wine. So the trick is to get them through winter.
We're talking about people who were the first pioneers in Quebec winemaking. I remember 30 years ago visiting Dietrich Jost, may he rest in peace, lovely man, who these were people who really, the real precursors for guys like you, even who were trying all kinds of things. I'm sure everybody learned from their mistakes.
Totally. I mean, without them, we wouldn't. I mean, I wouldn't have been confident to go along and start what we did. So there was that first wave of people who just figured things out. I mean, that berrying process, they had that. At least at Charlotte at Lochbert, had it so down. It was impressive. Yeah, all they done, all the experiments they did, and all that they pushed for that we could sell wine to in Quebec. That's another story, which I'm not really familiar with because I've just been more focused on growing the grapes. But
apologies for steering you off course, but go back to the beginning. You and Vero decide that you want to grow Chardonnay.
Right. So we're just like, okay, how are we going to do this? And as Dave said, we're not going to go outside bare chested. So we said, well, it's just a question if we humans can live through this winter, we should be able to find a way to get these Chardonnays who can actually survive up to probably about -22, -23, which we can't. So I said, this has got to be possible. So we went
Sorry,
around.
but that's totally crazy. Like, I can't even, that is very gutsy because I would just assume, crazy.
It's crazy. What shape was the vineyard in when you took it over?
It was actually not in bad shape at all. Being a grape grower who was growing the place, so it was neat and tidy. But he did say once we signed the agreement, actually once we got the financing and actually paid him, and he said, "Well, I have to tell you something. Those Chardonnays, you'll have to rip them out because they're not producing."
Oh, shit.
And I was like, "Oh well, I'm not gonna rip them out because we bought the vineyard to make Chardonnay in Quebec." So that's sort of when I said, okay, we got to figure this out. And that first winter that was 2000, we put geotextiles down.
Had you heard of this?
Yeah. Gilles Benoit, who was at Vignoble des Pins, which is now Xavier's place in Sabrevois. He had Zweigelt and Cabernet Franc, not a huge amount, but he had them under geotextiles. And I remember going there and I saw the vines and I said, oh, this is working. But in fact, it wasn't working completely well because the primary buds were surviving the winters. But with just the geotextile covering, the trunks were actually getting cold enough to get damaged and that the flow of sap was being hindered. And crown gall was, is starting to install in the trunk. So crown gall is a bacteria that kind of creeps in when there is damage. If it's, if there's any type of physical damage, which cold can do because the cold will snap open the trunk and the bacteria can get in. And then it basically strangles the sap flow up into the vine. And eventually the vines just sort of, run out of steam. So I saw that there. And then Léon Courville had planted his vineyard in 98 or 99. And
this is L'Orpailleur, right?
No,
Léon de Courville, yeah.
So what's it called today?
Brome something, but it was called Léon Courville for a long time.
Yeah. Is
okay.
it
now it's
Brome? It was Les Bromes. And
okay.
No, it's Brome now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they were doing all just straw. They were just throwing up straw instead of throwing up earth as they were doing at L'Orpailleur. They were just putting a whole bunch of straw. And then I realized that this was kind of cool, but the straw was actually with the winter and the snow and the rains getting, pushed down, and then going below sort of the bud level. And so the buds that weren't below the straw were obviously freezing. And the straw was kind of wet and it wasn't really insulating. So I said, okay, there's some positive here, but it's not perfect. And at Gilles' place, there was a lot going on, but I was seeing the crown gall. And that's where Véronique and I said, well, why don't we just do straw and geotextile? And then the straw will stay dry. And so it'll insulate. It'll also give it. So the problem with the geotextiles is that, and this might get a little too complicated, but if that geotextile touches a bud that you want to use next year, it'll burn.
Yeah.
So the buds have to be sort of away from the geotextile. There has to be an air zone. So we just decided instead of trying to create an air zone by hanging wires and trying to make like a tent over the vines where the vines weren't touching the geotextile, we said, well, if we put hay down, that'll create that layer. We could just put the geotextile on top of the hay, which is on top of the vine, and then just really push it down to the ground. And getting a little more technical here, but the flatter your tent is, the more snow it accumulates. And then the more insulation you get.
Oh, that's
on top.
interesting.
So in the sort of tent idea, there's, a pointy top and the snow sort of goes off. But in here where we have hay,
So you round it off.
Round it off and holds a lot more snow. So that worked out well too. So we tried that in 2000. We also tried some funny things. You're talking about putting the buckets over each vine at Lochbayer. Well, you can buy the copper insulation for your plumbing,
Yeah.
and we put that over each cave.
I remember I called you and talked to you about that because I'd seen it.
Uh-huh.
Do you know what I'm talking about, Lesley? Downstairs at your house, most likely you have a hot water heater, and then there are, of course, copper pipes that lead to the house. Now there's like a gray kind of styrofoam tubular insulation, right? This is madman's work. Right. So you would basically take the canes and put them inside of the pipe insulation, and then basically tie them down. But
you're wrapping them one by one.
Yeah. Yeah. And then put like a geotextile over, or try and bury them with earth. Yeah. It was basically what we found with the vinifera, with the Chardonnays, that if we buried them with earth, there was a lot of rotting of the buds. So you can make vinifera survive under the ground, but you do lose a lot of buds due to some sort of, they're just rot. They don't like being under there. Céval doesn't mind. Because we bury the Céval, sort of old Orpaillard style with the big
But Chardonnay mines, the Chardonnay is
all the vinifera, we said, whenever we bury it, we just, we're getting it deep under the ground, but we're just not getting good bud survival. They were kind of coming up a little soft. So that's when we realized that, the geotextile and the hay, we're going to at least keep them dry. And it was a whole, there was a lot of experimenting going on. And it's not only the winter survival that was important at the beginning when you were trying to get the Chardonnays to produce, was the fact that they have to have a certain type of pruning too. The sort of pruning that was being done, or that was very traditional, at least at our place, wasn't working. So it was a combination of changing pruning and changing winter protection methods to get the Chardonnays to produce, which I would say in maybe 03, 04, we were starting to get places. And then by 07, when we started doing a Scott Henry pruning, which is just a different type of pruning method that works really well at our place.
So for those who just want to see that, like, it's a simple, like, I can send you a picture when the podcast is out. We can put it up on the Instagram page, but there's really cool vintage images of this Scott Henry pruning. So I'll let Mike talk, but you just Google Scott Henry pruning to understand what Mike's talking about. It's kind of interesting. It's a couple of canes up, couple of canes down. It's a way of setting the vine up into the trellis, which is brilliant, actually. In warmer climates, that pruning stays up in the trellis forever. So you have to think that Mike's kind of building this Scott Henry, but he's also taking it down every year, which is incredible amount of work and very cool. I'm kind of fascinated with what Mike's been doing, because I had a low fruit zone for many years, basically all my fruit on the bottom wire, and I didn't like it because I felt it was unsanitary. I'm not doing in any way, shape, or form a true Scott Henry. But after kind of looking at Mike's vineyard, I do bring the cane up to the third wire now. So my fruiting zone is between my knees and my neck now, as opposed to it all being about 6 inches from my ankles. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So it kind of means getting the fruiting zone basically between your knees and your neck. Right, you've got this wall of fruit. If you ever go to Mike's and you see this, it's impressive. Mine is kind of cool as a neophyte, but Mike's got it down after all these years.
That's what I saw in the Okanagan, actually, all this low-hanging fruit. It's all very low. I have a question about the geotextiles, though. Who was the person where did they come from? Like, who was the first person to think of this way of protecting vines? Is it a Quebecois invention? Was it somewhere in Europe that they did this? I mean, do you guys know geotextiles?
I don't have the answer to that.
Yeah, I wonder who thought of that originally.
It's interesting. For sure, there's somebody who's first, but the geotextile, by the way, it exists as a product, right? You can buy it in white or black. Yeah, people when you build a ditch, it's actually I think the main focus of geotextile is that when you rip a road apart and you put before you put the gravel down, people put geotextile, now then gravel and then asphalt. It kind of it holds everything into place. It prevents erosion. And, it's nothing special as a material. It's a kind of crappy felt blanket.
Synthetic felt.
And it's expensive, no?
Yeah, well.
Yeah, it is expensive but I'm going to answer this question in a certain funny way. As people say, well, you grow grapes in Quebec, you bury your vines, you do it organically. Isn't that a lot of work? It was like, well, yeah, but you just plan the work and plan everything around it, and it just sort of, becomes part of what we do. So yeah, the geotextile is expensive, but it's included kind of in our budgets now, and I don't look at it. But yes, I think when you start out and you look at the initial investment that it would take you to do with the geotextile versus not doing with the geotextile, you're like, oh my God, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, it's a big bill, right? The bug netting is like always scary. It's like a $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 investment, and bug netting, which kind of sucks because it's just a bunch of plastic and rolls, and it sucks to put on the vineyard and sucks to take off. But you grow really good grapes with them, right?
Right.
And then, putting on the geotextiles. It's
the price of doing business. Yeah.
It is, yeah. But I'm kind of jealous, when I go to Europe and I see a beautifully trellised vineyard and they just kind of like harvest the fruit, make wine, and then fuck off and go on vacation.
Right. They're not rolling up any geotextiles. I want to ask you guys, because you're both winemakers in Quebec, different years that you started. David's quite recent. Mike,
I'm
you
still a
started...
grape grower,
Oh, sorry. Okay. Yeah. Well, sorry. But do you have to be a little bit insane to be a winemaker in Quebec? Because, we're talking back to the early days of the people who were starting, and now the Quebec wine scene is really being talked about, and things have changed because of people like you, Mike, honestly. The first time somebody said, oh, you have to have the Chardonnay from Les Pervenches, and I'm like, Chardonnay, But like, do you think that obviously all of this is worth it because you do it for a living and you've done very well, but this scene is really picking up in an incredibly difficult environment. So can how did you decide to say, okay, let's do this? I mean, when I say you guys are a little bit nuts, in the long run, you figured out how to make it work?
And 25 years ago is extra nuts.
Yeah, I would say it was there was some insanity for sure. We had to be kind of off the wall, thinking differently, thinking outside the box, just trying to, and like more like we were definitely trying to follow a dream. We decided, Véronique and I, that we wanted to be grape growers in 1995. And, we went to South America and realized it was kind of not like Europe. And then, Europe's like this and it's far away. It's not our home. So basically, after sort of tootling around and trying to figure out how we were going to become grape growers, we kind of realized that it was probably easiest to do it, where you grow up and where you live. And Véronique's family's are farmers in Bromont. So having, people with experience and tractors close by, not having to export wine was all something that made us think about doing it in Quebec. And so in spring 2000, Véronique and I went around the wine route and actually said, hey, there's some really cool stuff going on. And we guess what we had to say to ourselves is, if some people are doing it, we should be able to do it too. We're hardworking, we're young, kind of have some sort of intelligence. We should be able to, if there are 10 wineries that are working, well, maybe we can do it too. And then we just jumped in with that sort of, attitude at 27, it's just like, sky's the limit, let's go. And, but yeah, it's totally different today. That's for sure.
And what was your background before you got going? Like, were you a wine lover? Had you made wine somewhere else?
So I studied agriculture at McGill. I did my second year in France, in Toulouse, engineering school. Met some grape growers there. Some who are still really good friends today. And fell in love with the wine, first of all, in 95. I have to say, before going to France, I wasn't much of a wine drinker, much more of a beer drinker. But went there, fell in love. We had not winemaking classes, but wine tasting classes every Thursday. We'd, drink what was in the cellar of the school. It was great. They had a great cellar. So drinking a lot of Burgundy, a lot of Bordeaux, a lot of really good stuff. So it was a huge sort of, first lesson, to be tasting all those wines. And then we started, with class, we'd have to go and taste in Gaillac and then, taste in the Fontenay and then go around. And it was just, I started looking at the business and I was like, this is really interesting too. I mean, I coming from Quebec, where in those days, it was big farms, quotas, and price stabilizations. There wasn't much room for sort of small agriculture where you could, create a niche and go somewhere. It was starting, of course, but it wasn't very mainstream. So when I saw the people in Europe, just just 6 hectares of vines, or 3 hectares, or 10, or whatever the number is, and having a life that is in agriculture, based on if you do a good job and you work hard at it and you understand how it works, you're going to make a better product. And with the price elasticity of wine, you're like, okay, this makes sense, as opposed to if you want to grow corn, well, you might be really, really, really good at it and you can create volume. And that's what's going to give you, your livelihood is the volume and not really, really the quality, maybe more today than it was in the day. And so that was sort of something that really, really inspired us, was that idea is that, yeah, if you put a little more time and effort into it, at least you can make something that's better and move forward with that, as opposed to just sort of managing costs. You're sort of managing quality. So that's kind of a bit of the background before we bought.
So you bought the vineyard that was already in action. And if you go back to you saying that the Chardonnay produced no fruit, how long did it take before you saw some fruit on your Chardonnay vines?
Enough to sort of say that we're going somewhere was in 2003. So 4 years.
Right. But meanwhile, you're ripping up and planting. And are you only growing white varietals now?
No, we grow. Let's see. I'm going to try and go. So we grow more Chardonnay than anything else. And then we grow Céval second, and then Pinot Noir. So that's red. And then we use Weigelt, which is an Austrian red variety. We grow Gewürztraminer and Pinot Gris. So those are kind of in between. They're not really red. They're not really white. And those are the 6 varieties we go. So we do red probably about 30-35%. And then we make with the Pinot Gris and the Gewürztraminer, we make a macerated wine, sort of call it orange, I guess. And then the rest is pretty much white. Some bubblies here and there.
Which grapes cause you the most grief? Is it the Pinot Noir or the Chardonnay?
Oh, I think everybody gives me a little grief. Even a hybrid can give me grief. So even the Céval. I mean, it depends on the seasons. We have to work through. There's some grief, which is fun, that we used to have with the Pinot Noirs that we actually got through. We're talking about insect netting. Like Pinot Noir would just fall apart on the 15th of September. You thought you had a great harvest, and then you go out into the field and it would, we'd actually harvest by smelling if there was vinegar or not. So you just sort of walk with your nose and you walk down the row. So it's like, okay, we don't have to harvest today until you start smelling the vinegar, which was the, just wasps and insects and then the fruit flies getting in there and then getting that rot in there. And then we'd have to harvest. So that was really tough because, we could grow the grapes, get a lot of crop. It was really beautiful. I mean, yeah, of course it's tough with some fungal diseases in the beginning of the season, but once you get by the 1st of August, it's great. And then, so you really felt you were going all the way. And then you'd have to bring these grapes in 3 weeks earlier than before they were ripe because of rot. And so we started looking through what were the vectors in there, which insect was creating the first hole, which would attract the next insect, which would attract the next one. And we actually got down to a punaise, which we started seeing, which is an insect that is able to, just poke a little hole in the grapes just as they're starting to ripen. And then that would attract the wasps. And then once the wasps get in there and the fruit flies come. So we said we have to get rid of this. And then, obviously, we're not into trying to kill everything that's there. We want to keep variety. We want to keep diversity.
Are you organic?
Yes, we're organic.
You're organic?
Yeah.
Also biodynamic and
biodynamic
certified. So I think Mike just again, it's an interesting point to make. So there's organic, and then there's organic, then biodynamics. But then the greatest certification board perhaps in the world, in my opinion, is the Demeter certification. Now, I'll say this, it's very difficult to get there. How many years did it get you? So when did you become organic?
Well, actually, we became organic because we wanted to do biodynamics. So we basically, these are the years like in, 03, 04, 05, Nicolas Joly's making a lot of noise. Right. The wine bars are starting to open up in Montreal with, private imports and natural wines. So we're starting to taste a lot of things. And, so we're going around and, trying to sell Pervenche, and then all these, everybody downtown, Dave included, and every other great owner, sommelier that we met in those days would always pour, what was really cool and coming into Montreal. And so it was a great experience for Vero and I, because every time we'd go out to actually try and sell some Pervenche, well, we'd get a huge lesson in, what we should be doing, how it should be done. No, you didn't. No, but just kidding.
I was always like, this is delicious. Let's put it by the glass.
But really, and I'm not saying that with any type of, well,
sommeliers can be, I've had sommeliers from the city come down here and tell me how I should be pruning. I've had sommeliers come down here and tell me what I should be planting. But I let it slide as how can I say, the spontaneity of youth and discovery.
Right. There's a lot of
for a week with me, and then you might change your tone a little bit. But
the Demeter logo is on the back of the bottle, and you can see it. You see it a lot in
a lot in Austrian wines, but I mean, you see it a lot in all the French. I mean, so are you the only wine here in Quebec that
No,
has that certification?
Bergeville and Oak Hill.
Oh, Berger. Okay, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I have to say that our 2024 harvest is not certified because the certification went to Demeter USA. It makes it a little more difficult. A whole bunch of things changed when it went there. And Veronique and I just said, okay, well, look, we do this because we love what we do. And if it's becoming either drastically more expensive or just another certification without a sort of philosophy behind it, we were like, well, maybe we don't have to do this anymore. But if things change and it comes back and becomes much more local, then yeah, for sure, we'd go right back to doing it, and we'd never stop doing
that. Oh, that's funny you mentioned that. I'm struggling right now with the organic certification a little bit, just because of all I get from them is a bill, and the only 4 emails I get from them every year is in 30 days you owe us $1,500. Then I get a second email that says in 15 days you owe us $1,500, and then I get another email from them that says today you owe us $1,500. And then the 4th email I get from them every year is the receipt that I paid them $1,500. So, I have I have no problem. Send me videos, send me a newsletter, send me information about.
You're not getting anything for your $1,500.
Absolutely nothing. No, nothing. I just get bills, and I was a bit miffed last year. There's 2 years ago at my first, let's say, audit, where I was like sitting there and I had all my chemical purchases printed out, and they said, "Oh no, we don't look at that."
Do they come and check your vineyard?
I was like, "Yeah, they do. They walk around the vineyard, but again, I feel that they could be looking at potatoes, carrots, strawberries for this vineyard. I don't feel that anyone that's ever come to and I'm speaking personally. You might have a different experience, but I'm just feeling like I have very deep conversations with other farmers and other growers around me, and we talk about these things. Nobody asks me about the saturation of copper in my soil and what it will be in 10 years. These are all questions that I have. And then there's a part of me that says, like, this organic certification and the chemicals allowed in it are kind of asking me to deny science a little bit, right? You're kind of asking me never to go see a doctor, never to use antibiotics if my children have chest infections a little bit, I find. And again, I'm not dragging you down my rabbit hole, but these are my personal observations. They're basically saying, no, this is not approved. I had this issue where, I was making like a black walnut kind of, I read a weird article down at the bottom of some rabbit hole on the internet about getting rid of the Japanese beetles by soaking black walnuts and the leaves of black walnuts in a barrel and making kind of like a spray, a light fermentation to spray. So I was kind of making 50 gallons of this black walnut kind of juice that I was going to try and spray on the Japanese beetles. And I read this recipe was coming out of Japan somewhat. And I kind of told the auditor that I was going to do that. And I was thinking about doing that. And they said, oh, well, if you do that, you're going to lose your organic certification.
What? Jesus Christ. I mean, why?
Like, because you didn't buy it. It doesn't have a barcode and it doesn't come from a farmer.
Jesus Christ. I mean, this is crazy.
I have some issues like that. I just wish that, if I'm giving you $1,500 a year and you're coming once a year to do a little visit, I would like also you to give me information about, what's coming.
Yeah, right.
We're having a workshop. Look at these videos. Oh, look at this new list of adjuncts for the vineyard that you may consider using in the future. Hey, we're trying to certify this earth mineral for next year. I get nothing. So at the point, I'm like, why am I giving you $1,500? Am I giving you $1,500 to be able to write on my bottle that I'm organic?
You are.
So it's fucking marketing?
But it sounds to me like if you used your walnut spray, they wouldn't even have known if you didn't tell them. But nobody's checking up on. You're being honest, exactly. But
yeah, so it's strange. There's a part of it that I feel sometimes is a little bit of marketing. I say my career's always been. I tried to cook good food, and people said, pretty much like David's always tried to cook good food. I never tried to open a burger chain. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, right.
So, having had a career doing quality food, I'd expect that people think that he's doing the best he can at growing grapes in the best way, the best fashion possible. Anyway, I'm going down my stupid personal rabbit hole about it. But.
Cool. I mean, we can all go on about, about frustrations with certifications, but I have had some really good experiences. And with some of the inspectors who I became to know, and I can email them now and say like, why this, why that, what's wrong with this, and why that, and really get into sort of deeper conversations about why some things are allowed, some things aren't. I've been totally harassed about copper levels. I've had to make charts and everything, and then if I'm like doing the best, and I know I'm doing not the best, but I'm doing a really good job at it, and people are like tapping me going, that's not good enough, that's not good enough. So over the years I've definitely felt that it's not definitely not perfect. What you're saying, Dave, it does exist, of course, and it's there, and it's definitely something to question, but also on our end, I have had some good experience, met some great certifiers, and had some and felt that it was worth the money. Also, the thing about the question about you with regards to, let's say, the antibiotics and all that, you can look at it in a certain way, is that if, the idea of having a certification is for the customer who's going to take it and say, I know this doesn't have the antibiotics. And then if that's their choice, then that's what we have to live up to.
Yeah, for sure.
And obviously we can get frustrated in a certain sense, looking at, a problem or something and saying, for example, my God, I could so quickly just fix this problem and move on and be actually a better steward, but that's not what that label is saying. So, and the other thing I find that it's, the decision about what is organic, what's not organic, I'm not smart enough to make that decision.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the research enough. I'm a grower. I'm doing a bunch of other things. I'm not there, at least within the certification boards across the world. There are people actually thinking deeply about what should be organic and why not. So I kind of, even though I can, say, I don't think this is perfect, but I do at least believe in that they are working with a good intention to make sure that, what we're doing is right.
I'll stay positive.
Yeah. But
I had another deception this year. Like I was a spokesperson back in the day for regenerative agriculture when it kind of started off. And I talked to Jean Martin about it, the farmer here at Family Quatretemps and Grelinette, and of course the old mill. And he just basically told me like 2 weeks ago, where I saw a video that he did. He was like saying regenerative agriculture is like this new buzzword that's just brought to you by big pharma. And then I was talking to Cassidy online about regenerative agriculture, which is certification. Of course, I'll be dropping, unfortunately, but you do this regenerative, but they allow glyphosate. So I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? Like the everything that I'm doing, okay, is like we invest in weed management tools, and we work incredibly hard at making sure that the soil is fed, and that we're like spraying the minimal that we can in the vineyard, and that we're removing all weeds around the vines basically by hand or mechanically with machines, which are costly. And regenerative agriculture says that, well, it's fine if you spray glyphosate. It's like everything I'm doing is to not ever do that.
Right.
So it's so fun.
It's a huge discussion, that one. I mean, that's
the regenerative thing.
Yeah, it's tough because it
made sense at the beginning.
The base is huge. There's so many people, out there who are thinking and talking and pushing some seriously really interesting stuff about plant nutrition and microbiology and how that all works together, and how we can move forward with that with regards to disease and insects. The stuff that's coming out is actually mind-blowing. And then you hear, you're listening to your favorite podcast, you're getting so pumped, and then the next one is like, well, I'm a no-till farmer, and well, I just spray glyphosate because because I'm not going to go against no-till. And then you're like, what? And it really makes you think. What I like to think about all this organic stuff and sort of the limitations of anything that is sort of, I think that we can all say that the basic thing is that if you're organic, you're not using any synthetically made stuff, right? I mean, so we can use carbon sulfur. We could argue a long time about it, and we should, but we're not using anything that's synthetically made, just so that the molecules that go back are molecules that are in the earth, or are found on Earth, and they're natural. They're not going to be something that's going to hang around forever. There might be too much in one place, that's for sure, but at least it's something that it'll eventually wash around the world and balance out. And I really believe that what I like about being restricted and not thinking that maybe once or twice putting a synthetic chemical on to get rid of a problem that's been recurrent, because I think that once you could go down that step, oh my God, it's almost like Star Wars here, but you stop thinking about actually how to figure it out
the other way.
And if we all go down that path where you kind of say, well, just once I'm going to do that to stop that, and just once I'm going to do that to do that. And it's probably a great decision, but in my mind, I think philosophically, the long term, we need to find the ways to figure out agriculture without using those synthetics, because there's got to be a way. We're smart people, or we do make a lot of mistakes as humans, but in a certain sense, we've done a tremendous amount of really, really good things. And I think we can figure out this agricultural thing without having to, be band-aiding it all the time. I think we just need to change our practices, think and understand. And
I'm confident that, with the AI is going to tell us how to spray their vineyards soon. AI has been really great actually this year for myself. Like I ask it questions all the time, and it's like last year was terrible, but this year it's like really together.
It's gotten
okay, yeah.
We know tank mixes, and so far it's like right on the money.
I think there's another thing too when people are buying organic. There's the idea that you're buying because for all these reasons that people buy organic, because they think it's healthier and they don't want the chemicals. But it was a winemaker in Cahors of it was Chateau Le Cèdre. His name is Pascal. I can't remember his last name, but he was telling me that his father died of cancer and his grandfather. And just for me, the idea of and he said he just doesn't want to use chemicals because he doesn't want to inhale them, or the amount of chemicals winemakers were using in the past. I mean, another reason to buy organic is to support the winemakers who don't want to use chemicals for their own health. I mean,
of course, yeah.
And people don't think that way. People think of themselves. They're not necessarily thinking of, the conditions in the vineyard. When you see a beautifully pristine vineyard with not a weed and everything perfect, you got to wonder how much is being sprayed, so that's another reason to buy organic. Think of the winemaker. But, we're talking a lot about the vineyard work or the vineyard life and everything, but which is such a huge part. What do they say? 90% of the wine is all happens in the vineyard and 10% is in the shed. But for you also making the wine, I mean, so you're growing your grapes, your priority, but you also, first of all, people should know that Les Pervenches is one of the hardest wines to get, right? It's very hard to get your wine. It's sold out a lot and there's a huge demand for it. You'll find it. The first time I had your wine was at L'Express, because we couldn't find a bottle. I'm like, oh, look, there's some here. But so then the next step for you was making the wine. So what about the making of the wine?
All right, making of the wine. Well, interesting. Starting out, you got Chardonnay. I'm gonna, buy some new barrels and make Chardonnay and leave it on the lees and stir it around and get it all Burgundy. And sort of after a while, you realize, well, you live on different terroirs and different climates, and that's not going to work for what we do on our nice gravelly sort of light sandy soil. It's just going to actually overpower them completely and make them not where we wanted them to be. So that kind of, I think that point we start thinking, well, hey, we got to sort of lighten up on this sort of idea of either copying a style or trying to make a wine to be something else. How can I say this? You look at your vineyard,
like Merceau.
Exactly. No, you can't. I think the most important thing that Véronique and I work on all the time when we're thinking about, each harvest or in the future, how are we going to do this? We don't look at the grapes and say, oh, I'm going to try and make it like that wine or try and make it like that. We got to look at the grapes and go, okay, what do we have here? What type of climate did we get this summer? What's the best winemaking style, procedure that's going to make the best of what we see? And that's made us try multiple different ways of winemaking. And I think a lot, if we look at the way we put together our wines now, for example, Céval Chardonnay is, it's got 4 or 5 different winemaking techniques in the Céval and 2 or 3 in the Chardonnay. So it's not just when we make a wine, it comes in, we put it in a tank and it's going to be macerated 2 days, or it's going to be direct pressed and then 24 hours this and 24 hours that. No, it's, we remembered in, back when, in 2015, it was kind of like that. We did that with the grapes and the Céval really turned out really well. Okay, well, let's do a third that way this year. And then a third the way we did it last year because we were kind of happy with that. And then a third the way we did it 2 years. And then let's go down to a quarter each and try something new to see if we can make it different or better or understand the grapes better. Because, I mean, so yeah, we've done 25 harvests, but still it's kind of a mystery challenge every time you get those grapes in.
But the first years, were you doing just what you said? You were the first years. Were you trying to make another wine? Were you aiming for? Okay.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean,
I remember Mike's first wines as a restaurant buyer back then. I was like a young chef, and Mike would bring in they were always delicious, but I feel the early years were oaky.
Yeah, for sure.
Like big wood.
Yeah.
But you have to understand when Mike was hawking those wines, we were also selling, like, the best selling Chardonnay in Montreal restaurants was Arrowwood Chardonnay. And we were selling California Chardonnay, and
La Crema.
Australian
Yeah.
wines were creeping into the market,
Yep,
and
yep.
so it made sense then, you know.
Yeah. It was the style of the time, but
Sure.
just again coming back from the Okanagan, whenever we were tasting Chardonnay, the first thing they said is we really didn't want it oaky. And I was just talking to somebody about it, and I said, yeah, okay, but also you ended up with a lot of Chardonnays with not much personality.
Well,
The
you have to-
Chardonnays, like you got to find some kind of little middle ground there because there wasn't a lot of fruit, there wasn't a
Yeah.
lot of oak, and you ended up with kind of a dull white wine. I
Well,
mean,
people forget, it's an amazing place in the country, and I love it, and it's so beautiful. One of the most beautiful places in Canada.
it is.
And there's a lot of money invested into the
Big
wine
time.
business there, and I have a lot of friends that work in the wine business there.
Sorry, but just on that, they told me that now land in the Okanagan is worth more than Bordeaux.
Sure, but okay, let's bring that to one step further. Let's not also forget that it's a giant sand bowl.
Absolutely, it's a desert.
There's
It's Canada's
not
only
much.
desert.
Yeah,
Yep. Yeah.
there's the terroir is, unfortunately, sadly, apart from some mountain cliff for like some vineyards, like the general basis of the place is pretty much 300 feet of pure sand.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's basically like hydroponics in some areas, right? So it's cool. I love that. I wish there was more BC wines
There
at
are
the
none.
SAQ.
There are
right?
none. When I came home, I
Pathetic,
checked.
honestly.
There's no Tantalus. There's no Quail's Gate. Those are the bigger places. Forget
even the
about
small guys,
smaller. There are no
yeah.
small. Well,
Scout
but
makes
what
it
I'm
in here
saying
in
is there's
private
not even the
import.
big guys. There's nothing. It's
And you know what?
embarrassing.
Let me tell you a thing. When I did an event in Prince Edward County at the Grange Winery 3 weeks ago, I think it is 4 weeks ago now. And whenever I go see Jonas at Hinterland, and now Jonas is running Hinterland, Grange, and Redtail. We did a dinner there, and of course, a lot of the older winemakers that I'm friends with show up at the dinners, and I bring always 4 bottles of Mike's wines. I brought 4 bottles of Zach's wines this year, Zach from Lesley. I brought some of Big Fred's wines at Sarracine. Of course, I always bring some Pigeon Hill because they're actually the old winemakers are super interested, because they don't know what Marquette is, but they gravitate to me. These 20-something-year-old winemakers, 20 vintages in winemakers in Prince Edward County are always just can't wait to taste Mike's wines.
Right.
Can't wait, right? Because they can't get them. And that's sad. It's 3.5 hours. From here.
It's
pathetic, right?
Nobody in the Okanagans ever tasted Quebec wine, it's just hopefully that can change. There has to be something. It's just
I
ridiculous.
see right now my neighbors, they're not wine people. I have simple neighbors, even my parents, let's say, regular people, kind of are lamenting. They miss their California wines. They miss their 22, 24, 26, 27, California wines. They also miss their $15 and $16 California wines. And, I don't think the SAQs really worked very hard. It's dude, there's tons of wine in Southern
Absolutely.
Ontario and in British Columbia and even on Vancouver Island that there's an amazing opportunity to introduce people to the wines of Canada. And
Yep.
we talk about buying Canadian and drinking Canadian wine, but do we actually do anything about it? So far, we don't. Still,
Yeah.
now.
Well, just one detail though, there was really more or less no 2024 vintage in the Okanagan, so maybe that's one of the reasons they don't have the product. A lot of them were buying grapes from Washington State to actually make some wine. But anyway, but I totally, it's awful. But for you, Mike, you're not. Are you selling at the SAQ? Are your wines ever available at the SAQ?
No, we sell everything.
Is that on purpose, or you just don't produce enough, or?
It's on purpose. We could sell through, but it's just more profitable to do it directly. And it's a lot of, you're working with a big store. So, you got to go through all the bureaucracy to get things done and lots of paperwork and here and there. And then, get it sold to the SAQ. Then you got to go to each succursale and make sure that, they're buying your wine and selling the wine. Yeah, it's a big
It's
thing.
a process.
We're really, really lucky that over the years we've just developed our private customer list. We have a great restaurant base. Probably 50% is in restaurants. It's always been our main market. So we just kept working on that. And maybe we have about 10% in sort of grocery stores, 12%.
Will you ship across Canada? Can you do that right now?
I don't know what the actual laws are today, but we have shipped wine across Canada and had it destroyed. So we don't do
Destroyed.
it
Oh
yeah.
shit!
So
Because
we don't do it.
if you order wine from the Okanagan, you can have it delivered right to your front door in Montreal.
It's a gray area, by
Yeah.
the way.
Yeah.
It could be destroyed.
Yeah.
Right, I know
we
that-
had a case destroyed, so we just said no, we're not doing it
You're
anymore.
never gonna do it, right?
And if you want,
Jesus,
come see us if you.
that has to change. So
It's
okay,
in theory illegal.
okay, interesting. Okay, so just to go back to your winemaking. Sorry for every people who are listening, because we're a little all over the place. I think we're overly excited by these topics, but how would you describe, for instance, just baseline your Chardonnay? So today, what is your approach to things like wood? What is your approach? How are you making? Let's just we'll say Chardonnay because that's kind of
So we make 3 different sort of plots of Chardonnay that we sell in, as what would you call them? Single vineyard? Yeah. So I mean, obviously, over the years, as I said, we were always trying to see if we can make something better, or understand the grapes better, understand each vintage better. So we, have tried all sorts of different winemaking techniques on the Chardonnay, but we are, with the years, realizing that the best way to do it is just to put it in the press in full grapes, full bunches, no destemming, and just press it as delicately as possible, and make a very traditional white wine. 100% in barrels. All of our wines, 100% of our wines are aged in barrels. But over the years, I've been able to have a cellar that I have the barrels that I want, and I know how they're going to affect the winemaking process. But I truly, truly believe, and when I say I, of course, I'm always including Vero, but sometimes I'm just I. So we together.
Yeah,
and it's still true. But we really feel that, the barrel fermentation process is really, really key. For many, many reasons. You're dividing each. So, if we were making sort of Le Couchant, which is our old vine Chardonnay, let's say we're making 2,000 liters, so we've got 10 barrels. Had we made it in one tank, we'd have one wine. If we make it in 10 barrels, we have 10 wines. Each one is fermenting at a different temperature, has a little more of the press, a little more of the free run juice, different yeast. It's all spontaneous yeast. So there's a microbiology in every barrel that's different. And there's a different amount of lees that they age on. There are different heights in the cellar, so that's different temperatures during the winter. And we always find that so you get that complexity from, not putting all your eggs in the same, basket, I guess that's the expression. And also just having those different fermentations that we're all going to bring together and bottle as one. So basically that's our technique, having a lot of small batch fermentations, doing a whole bunch of different things in different barrels with different ages and different forests. I don't get geeky about it, but I know there's an influence that, that I better, when I'm making Le Couchant, I have a barrel, 1 or 2 barrels that are 5 years old, some that are over 20 years old, and somewhere in between. And that kind of makes the mix that we want. So we're getting the influence of the barrel without having the oakiness. And there is an influence that exists that's not just flavor.
So is the oakiness is the wood at its best an enhancer without being a dominator? Is that it?
That's a very good way to put it. And finding that balance is really hard. At one point, we actually went so far into using old barrels that we weren't getting that little nuance.
Right.
And so we came back and said, okay, no, for the Chardonnays, they need to be a mix. But, going too much into sort of a 4 or 5 year old barrel and saying, oh, that's it. We found the perfect thing. It's a 4 or 5 year old barrel from this forest. And then you do it and you're like, and you taste later on. You're like, well, it's too much of an influence. So I really feel in varying. And because I've never felt that, I knew enough or, just had enough experience with each barrel to get to a point where you know exactly what you want to do with it, that you better just spread things out over a large sort of amount of different things. If it's different winemaking process, different barrels, different places in the cellar, it always seems to be more interesting at the end. The final blend is always much more complex than trying to actually figure out one way to do things perfectly.
Do you have a favorite cooperage?
No.
What's that, David? What's that?
A barrel maker.
Oh, okay.
People love certain things. I had an interesting tasting recently in Prince Edward County where Jonas was walking me through, some barrels that I think that I like, where he was telling me, you think you like this, but taste this. And I was like, oh, maybe I don't like this. And he goes, you also said you like this barrel, now taste this. And I go, oh, I fucking hate that. But then he goes, you also said you don't like this barrel, but now taste this. So, I tasted a Chardonnay out of a brand new Stockinger barrel. You ever try those?
No.
Fantastic, unbelievable. I thought it was nothing. No toasts, no.
But they're on like clay calcium soils, right?
Yeah.
Totally different, like beefiness in the middle of the mouth that doesn't exist on the stuff that comes off sort of gravelly, sandy stuff where that type of influence. Like I'm not saying that what you just said is not
No,
right.
but
I'm just thinking as soon as
there's barely any topsoil in the county.
Yeah.
It's pure limestone, right?
Mhm.
It's a slab of rock. Basically, it's interesting.
It is really interesting. We were at Pearl Mauricette 2 weeks ago. They invited us down, a whole bunch of growers, and we had this great event there. And just tasting the different wines from sort of gravelly soils to the more limestoney soils. And it because you used to drinking sort of Burgundy, and that depth that you can get in the mid palate. But then to taste the exact same winemaking process off the two different terroirs, it was pretty clear. It's fun. It's exciting.
But for the two of you, David was starting out and you 25 years in, it seems to me that your winemaking is a combination of outside influences, learning all these things that wine should be, and then the reality of what you're seeing in your chai. Like you can have a lot of great ideas that I'm sure even in the vineyard that end up going nowhere because that's not your reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's only so much manipulation you can do, right?
Yeah, completely. That's what makes it it's so fun because you're always tempted to go, and people are always asking me, still today, why don't you do this? Why don't you try that? Why don't you do this?
Right.
And it's like, well, and after 25 years, I kind of feel bad now because I'm kind of like, I'm going to say, well, no, I mean, I don't think I'm going to try that because I maybe have tried it 15 years ago. Maybe it'll work today, but I'm kind of just sort of fine-lining things now.
And isn't the ultimate, like, is your wine a so-called natural wine? I just made the little quote marks.
Yeah.
Like, is it also about the least intervention possible?
For sure.
Like, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, our wines I call them sans intrants, so there's nothing in them. You can call them natural if you want. I just find that that's just another word that's getting.
Is there no sulfur whatsoever? There is
no ingredients in it. No.
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 Wow. In the bottling, there's no sulfur?
No.
Wow. Okay. Good. Wow. Great. So you are doing things, but you are also as low intervention as possible.
Yeah,
you're not manipulating the one.
We started the non-intervention and lower intervention because it didn't go from being these oaky Chardonnays that we made early in the days.
I like them.
I know, me too. I like opening them now and going, "Hello, it wasn't so bad." To today and now, where we don't, it was a long process. So we made our first wine without any additives at all. What's it called? 0-0?
Yeah.
0-0, we'll call it. In 2007, on sort of after coming back from meeting Marcel Lapierre and getting all excited carbonic macerations and how they're going to influence the wine and make them fruity, take off the acidity, less hybridy. And then I saw the winemaking process and said, this is a perfect winemaking process to start without yeasting or anything, because it was a carbonic maceration, and generally those can do it all by themselves. We were doing them all by themselves in the day, so I said we started doing it that way. I mean, the technique behind carbonic maceration is a longer story, but basically it's a really cool way to start a fermentation and to get things all going really well. And it makes these light, fruity, super enjoyable
Beaujolais,
wines.
right? Beaujolais wines?
Beaujolais style, for sure. That's exactly it. And so we did that in 2007, and we made a wine with Foch that had no additives. We probably made about 300 bottles, did a barrel, and then said, oh, that worked well, and went up to 2 barrels. And in 2008 and 2009, it was really, really cold, kind of low alcohol, high acidity vintages. So we were like, okay, let's make a lot of champagne style, sort of méthode traditionnelle. So, but we were still chaptalizing at that point. So the carbonic maceration helped us realize that we didn't need to add yeast. And then 2008, 2009, we started making the base wines for making sparkling wine. So those base wines sort of have to be a little less ripe and a little more acidic and a little simpler than what you're trying to do if you're making a Chardonnay, normal sort of white Chardonnay. And so we had the colder ones ready for the more acidic ones ready for making the sparkling wine. But at the same time, we'd chaptalized, which is adding sugar to what was going to be our Chardonnay. So it was kind of coming out at like 12.5 or 13 degrees alcohol, yet the base wines were at 10.5 for making the sparkling wines. And in March, when we were tasting the cellar, we were tasting the base wines for making sparkling and saying, hey, these are great wines all by themselves.
Mm.
And then we go back and taste the chaptalized ones, so that where we'd added sugar at harvest, and saying, well, we understand there's a little more heat to them. There's got a little more mouth to them. They're a little more beefier.
Higher alcohol, higher alcohol level. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so that higher alcohol kind of like at the same time as it gives you a little more heat, a little more volume, it also softens up the acidity because there's a kind
Stronger
of
flavor. Is it a flavor enhancer?
I never looked at it as a flavor enhancer. I really felt it as a feeling enhancer. You know,
Okay.
sort of,
Okay. Like a mouth texture enhancer.
mouth texture and something to compensate the acidity.
Okay.
And just up, it has to have a flavor increase because the extra alcohol that's added to it are gonna, help uplift the odors when it comes out for sure. There's definitely going to be a flavor, or aromatic enhancement at the same time. But we were feeling that the wines at 10.5 degrees that were, in March were actually more complete, more authentic.
There's nothing wrong with, by the way, there's nothing. One of the best Pinot Noirs I ever tasted was like, I think 10.2% alcohol. And it's phenolically ripe, deep and delicious. And that was the alcohol. It was 10.2.
Yeah.
And I was just like, you know.
Look at German Riesling, sometimes it's 9.5. I had a beautiful 9.5 German Riesling. I was floored how beautiful. But I think people are also looking for low alcohol wines, but
that just helped us realize that we didn't need to chaptalize anymore. So we kind of realized we didn't need to yeast, we didn't need to chaptalize, and then we sort of made a whole bunch of wine till 16 with a little bit of sulfur and a little bit of filtering. And what had happened at that time is the word natural winemaking was all around, and then people were going, "Well, Les Pervenches is natural," and I was looking at Veronique like, "Oh God, we do put out wines without any ingredients at all, but the main 70% is." Albeit very, very small amounts of sulfur dioxide and a very, very light filtering. That was 70%. It's like, well, for me, natural wine is, just to come back to your question, is without anything in it. So if people are out there saying, oh, Les Pervenches is natural, I can't walk out there and say, hey, no, actually, we're putting a little bit of sulfur and we're doing a little filtration. So Véronique and I just looked at each other and said, you ready to go all the way? And we said, let's do it. So we just said for the 2016 harvest, we just said, well, if that's what people are saying about us, we better live up to what they're saying. So we just put out the whole vintage since 2016 without anything in it, and has been doing it since.
It never re-ferments in the bottle, never returns.
Once in a while, you do get
stuff.
some things that you're not happy with, for sure. And that really makes you think and second guess what you're doing. But generally speaking, over those, I don't know how many vintages, we've been very, very, very satisfied. But yeah, for sure, sometimes you're just like, a 22 or 23 vintages, it just wasn't clear. There was nothing wrong with it. It wasn't re-fermenting. It was just this,
right.
One
of my favorite bottles.
Like, oh my God.
One of my favorite bottles of wine ever that you made. I think I texted you about it. Remember? I had bought Céval Chardot. I had a bottle with my wife, and it was delicious and yellow and the color of white wine. I was like, wow, that was so beautiful. I had a bottle the week after, and it was going pink.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And then I was like, wow, that's interesting. Yeah. What's this?
Yeah.
Right. And I said, oh, maybe it's a bottle flaw, whatever. I hadn't want to, 4 days later, this pink again, but a different pink. Yeah. And then a month later, it was back to normal. I was like, this is so fucking fantastic. This is this is why people get excited about natural wine, because the wine, it was just, what is this color? Where is it coming from? And I told you, and you're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm
kind of figured it out more today because we've had it happen a few times, but now I'm more comfortable with it. But that was probably the first time it ever happened, and that was.
You've seen this though. I'm not crazy.
Oh no, it happens now. Not as. Yeah, it happened. I don't know. Was it 20, 21, 22? Yeah, you just put it in the bottle, and then the oxygen that happens at the bottle hits this. There's a little bit of skin contact in those wines, and it just goes and hits the phenolics, and they pink them. It's called pinking. And 3 months later, it's back to this sort of nice.
But I like that pinking thing because of the white grapes.
You just don't want it to go brown.
Yeah,
then it's a little. It's not browning. Yeah,
it's browning. Pinking's fun.
Oh, I have
browning's bad.
Have you had my brown wine?
No.
At Saracen?
No.
Then that Hayfield.
Yeah.
Complete disaster.
Okay, yeah. I thought yours through them for sure.
David, how do you call Mike often? Like, do you consider him a mentor in a way?
He's for sure a mentor. I don't bother him because he told me something really interesting a long time ago.
He said, "Don't call me."
No. I just figure I can. How can I say? He set the bar so high that we just know not even to try super hard, because these 25 vintages in. Listen, I'm not saying that because he's sitting next to me, but like I often go downstairs to the cellar on like the odd day that I have wine with my wife, and I look and now I've got Ganva down there and Burgundies and whatever you want, and I'm always like, oh, this is what I want. I want Rosier, I want Couchon, I want like, and we're always just sitting there going, my wife will say, fuck, this is good, like. And my neighbor feels that way. Pierre Alexandre like just loves the wines, and so does everyone. Like it's everyone's, not because it's local. I'll tell you this. I think I like to believe that if I lived in Ontario, and I taste a lot of Ontario Chardonnay, and I'm a Chardonnay kind of freak a little bit. That's what I like to study, kind of thing. And listen, from coast to coast, I was like, Mike makes possibly the top 2-3 best Chardonnays, and sometimes he makes number 1, number 2, and number 3 top Chardonnays in Canada year after year after year. And when I have American guests come to the farm and, they're like, what's this? This is wonderful. What is it? I'm like, yeah, it's down the road, So it's cool. We know better not to bother Mike, but, we all know, how can I say, we've visited the vineyard. We've seen his viticulture. We understand the work process. Even if he doesn't know that, like, let's say if I go there, I see something like the water tank thing, the way he fills the sprayer. I'm like, I'm doing that. I'm stealing this, where I was kind of stealing a little bit of stuff, or,
Are you going to wrap the copper wire protector over your?
No. But I thought about it for a minute, and I asked Mike, and he said, no, it's a bad idea. There's be styrofoam everywhere. So for sure, I think Mike inspires a whole generation of young winemakers across Quebec, not just me. But the thing is like he's been kind of shared information with so many people that I don't really need to call them, because I'll call
the knowledge is out there.
Yeah, I'll say, they'll always tell me, oh, Mike does this. I'm like, oh, okay, perfect. So like he's been generous with the information with many, many people. So I don't necessarily have to bother him. And especially after 25 years, you're kind of respectful of like, let's not bother him with dumb questions about, can I mix this into my tank with copper? There's Zach from Lespiègue for that, right?
There are other people to ask dumb questions for.
I often think, I would love to ask Mike his opinion on this, but I don't want to bother him, so I'll ask Zach.
All right, 2 things, man, because I'm sitting here turning red here.
Right.
2 things. First of all, I phoned Dave this spring and asked him, actually, maybe you just hinted to me that there was something better for weeding out there.
Right. So,
I phoned Dave this spring and I said, what's that machine? He's like, I'll give you the contact right away. Phoned it, ordered it. It's one of the biggest changes that we've made in a long time at the vineyard. So, I mean, I love the circling of it all. It's so much fun.
So shout out to Thiessen Village.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Everybody needs one of those.
Yeah. So Fred got one. You got one.
It's amazing. It's a life changer.
I got this early on because I saw someone using it in the county, and I was like, wow, your weeding is perfect. And I've been sitting here now for 3 years, basically self-congratulating myself about how good my weeding is. Waiting for people to realize, because the viticulturists, the agronomists go, your weeding is perfect, right? And I go, yeah, you should tell people this machine here. And I think Mike asked about it. No, I was at your place last year.
It was last year, I think.
You guys were pioching away.
I used to love pioching. I think it was like, I was like, oh, pioching is great. I mean, you got to go out there.
Can you tell people what that means?
Hoeing. It's going out and hoeing the weeds. So,
there's only so much you can get of the weeds out of the vineyard with the traditional, let's say, equipment that's available.
And why'd you want to pull the weeds?
Underneath the vines, you kind of want to keep that free and clear of weeds.
To avoid pests or to avoid mildew, to avoid everything?
Sure, all those things, but also to get water penetration somewhat into the vine and just keep it nice and clean and free of weeds. It's different with hybrids. The hybrids are so vigorous, and I don't even weed the hybrids. It slows down the vigor, and I feel that it's way better for my hybrid. I haven't even been in there once this year. It looks like a jungle. Whereas vinifera, I really believe needs a clean base at the bottom, and it's just a mess, right? So
yeah, it kind of sucks them. It can really ruin. It can come to the point where that'll bring down the vigor of the vines. There'll be too much competition, but it's a really fine line because we can get some competition there. I mean, sometimes I will go and sow, crops under the vines to have the microbiology develop there. But sometimes I would go too far. It's too vigorous. Sometimes it affects the flowering of the vines. So in a certain sense, we need to keep it clean. There's the competition. There's also a management aspect when we got to prune and put those geotextiles and bring the vines down. If it's a weedy mess in there, the productivity of the work goes down so much. So there is a bit of a compromise there to keep that weeded. Whereas it's definitely, I think agronomically, it would be really good to have some sort of, cycling of plants down there.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
well, we're also mulching the weeds with this new equipment, with this Thyssen tillage machine. We're kind of mulching the weed back in. Like we come and we finger weed, and there's these cutters as well, these that just spin on their own with the inertia of the tractor. We're kind of killing the weeds, but they're feeding the soil, right? So there's that. But anyway, that point being, I saw this machine in Prince Edward County, the Ryan Thiessen's machine, and I saw some beautiful weeding there. And I'm one of those people. I'm a bit lazy. I still carry a little bit of body fat, like unlike you who are so healthy and marathonian. It's like I was like, fuck, I hate this, especially and
the hoeing.
Hoeing sucks, and we're all out there, and it's burning hot, and you can't drink enough water. And it's when people quit, when people are like, fuck this, I hate this, I'm not working here. Like, it'll be the pioche.
I always try to convince, now not anymore because we're in this new era with the Thyssen, but I used to convince anybody who would come to the vineyard that hoeing was the best thing in the world.
Make yourself
believe. It was good. It was healthy.
Good
you feel so good at the end of the day. It's like, yeah.
You lost all your friends.
Actually, I had to,
If you get
actually some got into it. It was really fun. It became kind of a thing at Les Pervenches, man. If you go, you're gonna hoe. So only the people who would come knew that they were gonna hoe. And now with the new Thyssen, no longer. And I think it's better in an aspect, because what you said about that mulching, when we're hoeing, we're actually, you hoe the earth away into the row. Yeah, when you're mulching, you just whatever growth was there, it just sits there, feeds the microbiology under the vine. So it's definitely a cycling of microbiology, which is really important under the vine. So it's great. The collaboration is that after 25 years, no one's phoning me anymore because of it. So please phone me. No, I'm kind of feeling lonely at the vineyard. No one wants to know anymore.
Nobody's bothering Mike.
I'm going to test you some dumb questions.
That's hilarious. But I want to know, Mike, because a big issue, of course, with everybody who has a vineyard is the future. So do you have kids who are interested in what you do?
No, I have kids, but
they're not interested.
Not really.
Why? You think? Why do you think they're not interested? Too much work?
I have one daughter. She's 20. She sees the whole. Obviously, I think that any child obviously wants to go and do their thing. And I think a lot of people say, oh yeah, but you'll see, when once they go out and get a job, and then they'll want to come back and remember the lifestyle. I mean, sure, maybe, but I don't feel it, and I don't want to pressure. I used to pressure. Now I don't want to pressure anymore, because I really want our daughter Celine to go out and do it. She does not feel that there's a pressure, and and have to come back, because we do it because we love it. We're so passionate about wine and vines and everything. But I always try and look at it from the point of view of someone who's not as crazily obsessed with this domain. And it's kind of not the type of place you don't want. I mean, you don't want someone who's not like super crazy about it to be doing it, because it would actually be kind of a lot, not as fun. Well, not at all.
There's a lot of horror stories in Europe about it, right? There's a ton of horror stories. As much as some people are so happy to take over their family's domains, which is super cool when that happens. But some kids, like, I think as a dad, you just want what your daughter wants, the best for her, right? If you're into agriculture, doesn't mean, like, if you're a teacher, doesn't mean you want your kids should be teachers and do whatever they want.
Yeah. Well, in France too, they have a massive inheritance tax. So not only do they take over the vineyard, they've got to pay. They can often lose it to because of the inheritance tax. At least it's not. Yeah, it's true. It's your passion, not necessarily theirs.
Yeah,
right?
but it definitely, there is obviously that deep down you'd just love to, imagine your daughter to your kids to be doing that, and having the same joy and satisfaction, and all the people involved, and all the great people we know, and everything it's all about people, really. I mean, we love the vines and the stuff, but it all comes down to like it's so much fun, our business, to just be, always chatting about this thing. We're so passionate. It must be like that for a lot of businesses. And so, I'm not saying that it's any different in grape growing, but I mean, that's what I enjoy about it, is all that camaraderie around it, but also the, that continuous trying to figure out how to, not collaborate with nature.
Right.
So yeah, it's interesting. And I'd really, so deep down it would be fun. And it would probably in the long run easier if my daughter wanted to come and take over Les Pervenches, because if he doesn't, which I'm thinking about right now, this is the
You'll have to
kind
sell.
of tough thing that's happened now. 25 years, we're going to celebrate it. But I was driving down here today thinking, okay, what is 25 years for me today? Well, it's like, okay, it's kind of like things don't move as fast as they did when we were younger. It's like you change your pruning 25 years ago and it was a whole new world. Now it's just a nuance. You're trying to look for this tiny little thing. So the satisfaction of making a good decision and getting like a quick feedback, it is sort of less now. And so everything's just sort of going into place. And you kind of, feel that unless I have a new project in my mind or something, this is kind of like, this is what it is and this is what I've got. And Véronique and I don't want to expand. We don't want to plant any other different varieties. I mean, of course we do as lovers of the business, but as managers of our business now at our age, we're just gonna like, oh, this is what works and this is what we do. Let's do the best as we can. But as we do that, basically without like running forward like we were when we were younger,
It's no longer.
it's like a lot of other little things irritate you. It's like, oh, I'm not doing that as well as I should have, because you're not on this big gung-ho forward movement. So that's kind of hit me this year. And obviously, we just talked about my daughter who's 20, who's becoming, independent, beautiful, and, got her whole world going with her. She's going to Quebec to Laval University, and, she's going there in the fall, but she's already up there every weekend, and she's with a gang and she's having fun and she's out all the time. She's never home anymore, even though she works at the vineyard. So I'm realizing, yeah, okay, it's kind of, now we're planning for
The next 25 years.
yeah, and
What's it going to be?
exactly, and that's scary. It's so scary because it's like, okay, well, do I invent something? Because before it would just come naturally what I was where I'm going, what I'm doing. I want to do this. I want to do this. And as I said, but now all those little things are just slowing down. There's no longer leaps and bounds of exciting new information, apart from the Thyssen, of course. And,
Right. Well, there you go.
yeah, exactly. But that's more on a technical issue rather than understanding the vine and with regards to wine and how the terroir Les Pervenches will evolve. You kind of, as we're making wine, we've seen so much evolution. We've talked about going from making oaky Chardonnays to taking out the ingredients to feeling that getting all this whatever that all that brings together, and then now they just feel that the steps aren't going to be as big
Major.
as majors. And so it's like, okay, well, what do you do for 25 years? And then someone asked me, he's like, well, do you want to go into politics? I'm like, no. Because I had a discussion with another grower, and he's the same age as me. And he's like, well, I've still got to do this. I need to build this. I need to do that. I need to replant this. I got to do this. We're thinking about this. I got my kids coming in and we're doing all this. And he said, well, what about you? I said, well, I don't know. I'm just going to just keep moseying forward here. And that's
keep making better wine.
Yeah. But I realized that that's a very scary place to be in at 53 when, there still are 25 years ahead. And that, something will come up. I'm not really, it is in a certain sense scary because you kind of feel that you're starting to sort of plan the end. And that's a big hit. So I think even before 25 years, so yeah, my daughter becoming independent, I'm not, I mean, I'm going to share this, but my dad passed away in January, and then we were celebrating our 25 years. So lots of things coming together in my mind. And then it's the first time in my life I've realized that, that I'm planning for the end, and that's scary.
That's it, because you're planting for the future. That's why I always ask about the kids, because I'm thinking, are you going to see these vines at their peak?
Totally.
You're still young though. You're still young. But it's interesting about the kids taking over the vineyard, because I met a lot of winemakers in Europe whose kids were taking over the vineyard, and you sensed a lot of tension between the child and the father, especially if the father was kind of 60, 70 years old, that they just didn't want. In Croatia, we met this young winemaker, and her father had very oaky wines, and she just left the tasting. She was there seems to be, I saw much more conflict than a nice relationship.
Than good things,
Mike and I are good friends with the Kevin Schufelt from Pigeon Hill, and they're going to hate that I even say this, but I'm going to say it anyway, because these are people that these are true, Saint Armand farmers. They're people of the land. I adore the family. I adore the kids.
They're great.
And, they're a rugby family. They farm sheep, lamb, and now hogs. And, they do a great job with the hybrid vineyards that they have. And I truly like, the barquettes and everything that they make. But, when I hang out with them, if we just get loose on a Tuesday night and have a couple of bottles just, poking around, there's this total family tension because Kev has been making the wines with, Manon has been pruning the back vineyard for forever. And there's this collaboration. And I learned to get to know them first. And now Trish has like a strong character and studies. And, she's been working in agronomy and whatever else she's doing, rugby player. And then Matthew and Thomas is a bit of like a jock a little bit. And Matthew's got his own ideas about winemaking. He's grown up in it. And
came back from Europe.
He tastes a lot. He goes to wine bars downtown. Maybe he wants to I feel that he'd like to make the Marquette a little bit lighter than that. And it's like sometimes we're just sitting there and I ask questions and I feel this like crazy family tension. But I also love to see that there is a movement there in Pigeon Hill. There is what they call une relève, the kids are coming, Trish is coming, Thomas is coming, Matthew's coming, and Kevin's kind of like trying to manage the whole thing. And it's so sweet and funny to watch.
Yeah. Well, in France, a lot of these kids who went to school and their parents didn't go to school, so they learned all this. And I met one winemaker in Provence, and he said my father he learned from his father and everything. He said, but I did my stage at Ridge, and he said, I want all my wine now to be like Ridge. And I'm like, you're in the middle of Provence, kid, but that was his plan, so good luck for you.
Well, that was a big thing back in the day with, when the French sons and daughters
all went off to
University of California at Davis, right? So all of a sudden, you're getting Véronique Drouin is a good example, but many, many, many more. You're getting these children leaving Merceau for the first time, and they're at the University of California at Davis, and all of the new world winemaking and new world flavors, and but that wasn't great too, because you saw lots of kids come back and make like some really ratchet wines in Burgundy, some like 100% new oak barrel fermented nonsense but generally it's good as long as everybody's happy and excited.
Yeah, I didn't see a lot of happy people. I saw some very upset fathers and kids. No. Really, the only ones who I ever saw who really wanted to respect the father's wishes was at Barmez-Boucher when the father died in a terrible biking accident in his 40s. And I went there right after, and they said he kept the most meticulous books of winemaking, and we will follow it to the letter. And he wasn't saying we want to make Ridge. He was really respectful of everything the father, who was really meticulous, did. So, that's beautiful too, that he wanted to maintain the tradition and not start making Chardonnay in Alsace, So that was great. Yeah, well, I think that's a good place to wrap up, that we talked about the future, because what a treat. Now, now everybody's going to rush off to Les Pervenches, and there'll really be no wine to buy ever,
Who's your best retailer in the city? If somebody that's listening to this is in Montreal and they wanted to buy a bottle of Pervenche, like who do you know that carries a large inventory?
Do they sell it at Boucherie Laurence?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say, but I'm just thinking of where I might get some. Just thinking of Fromagerie Hamel, Pascal Le Boucher, Boucherie Laurence. But we do sell a bit to Avril too.
Oh yeah.
And so at the 10-30 and in Laval, there could be. It's kind of like this hidden thing. I mean, people are starting to know about it, but it's still sometimes
now we know.
there.
If you go around the hip restaurants in the city, I think everybody's really solid out there, like respecting their allocation.
There's a lot of wine out there. It's just spread out. So I mean, there's ways to get it right now. I mean, it was 24 was a really nice harvest. We delivered a lot of wine to Montreal, to the restaurants, and to those places I mentioned. So there should be
able to find it.
Yeah.
A few years ago, it was like impossible, but it's better. And how is
out in allocations? That we don't have the store open. There's nothing that's available like that. But
of course, you don't sell wine at the property.
No.
You don't go to the property.
You don't sell wine at the property.
No, the store's closed. No. Everything is out, allocated in the stores, in the restaurants, in our private customers' homes. So you'd have to find it through a.
Do you ever have a store where you sell?
No.
Oh, never. Okay, never. So it's online.
We have our private customer list that we have. It's full right now, but there is on the website there is a.
If somebody dies on the list, you may have a chance to get on.
Get it on the list, and
then
we have bigger harvests. We take people off the waiting list and bring them in, and we've been doing it for a long time too. So we do have customers who are getting older who buy less so we can bring in some people too, some newer people. So we do try and keep that waiting list moving, so it's not just known as some sort of static thing. We do keep it going, and we do try and adjust to make it work for people. Because I mean, it's great. I mean, but it's kind of really always hard to not be able to actually, people.
It's a blessing and a curse to be successful.
It's tough.
I hated when, at Joe Beef's heyday, at one point, I think the reservations were like almost like 8 weeks out, and it just broke my heart sometimes with these nice people. I'd meet them on the street and I couldn't get them in, or I get this really nice email from someone from Boston or a chef from Toronto or California. And I was like, success sucks a little bit sometimes because
I'd call David. I'd say, I have these great people coming to town. They can't get into Joe Beef, right?
I know it's a pain, but
Yeah. Yeah. So, but okay. And how does 2025 look? How's it looking so far?
I had some tough times this spring. I have to say it was
slow spring.
Well, I just, I mean, not to go. I know we're wrapping up, so I'm not going to go.
No, go for it.
Yeah. Well, I know we just I've looking at the pruning and getting older and thinking about passing the vineyard on. Well, a lot of as Dave was explaining, that Scott Henry that has to come up and down, that pruning system up and down. It's fine because I'm kind of leading and showing and managing that process, and I realized that if there's still better, I can still do it in a better way, still having the same gains that we can get from that type of pruning, but I can make it simpler. We had it on like a 3-year pruning program with new trunks and stuff. I said, it's got to be simpler than that or I'll never be able to actually pass it on. And I wouldn't mind seeing my vineyard go back to normal pruning, but I know that in certain places and in most places, this is a better pruning than just standard pruning. So I'd really like to find a way to do it better. So I made the decision. I was testing it over 3 years. We'd be out pruning with the employees, and I'd just prune a section the way I would see it in the future, and then come back 2-3 times in the summer and at harvest and say, okay, it's working. So I did it 3 years, and then this spring I decided I was going to pass that information on to our 3 Mexicans who work with us, who've been working with us for a long time. So, they know what we're doing. So it's kind of an easy thing to pass on, and showed them the new pruning. I'd been kind of talking about it a little, so they were ready for it. But it was also a year that we had a lot of rodent damage. So that's under the geotextiles and under the, obviously, mice can get in there and they can sort of gnaw away at the buds, because the buds are very nourishing. And this winter, our neighbor was clearing his woods right on the side of the vineyard. So, I think a lot of rodents came out of the woods and got into the vineyard this winter. And so there was a lot of damage on the trunks and on the canes and to the buds. But there's different rodents and they damage in different ways. And maybe I hadn't made it quite clear to everybody which type of damage I was talking about, where you really needed to think about putting up a new cane, because there is damage. But the way we prune in the fall, we bring down so much extra wood and buds that if there is damage, there's always a way to prune the vine to have its right number of buds. So I realized that when I walked through the vineyard after pruning, I would go, oh, this is wrong. I mean, that this, this cane doesn't have any buds on it. That one was damaged. So I kept, going out, and I was pruning too, but I was also doing mechanics, and I was getting wines ready for bottling and stuff. So I was kind of in and out. And because our employees, have been doing a great job for so long, that I thought they had this. And it's not that they didn't have it. It's just I wasn't there enough to teach. And so there was a bit of the pruning wasn't as perfect as it could have been, because it was a really, really, all the buds had survived. Had they not been eaten by the rodents, they'd survived the winter really, really well. So we were like really excited that we were going to be able to get a beautiful pruning done. So I was kind of sad about that. It kind of is like, I'm saying after 25 years, how can I make a mistake of that? Of not, why did I go and fix that tractor when I should have been out there with the guys pruning, which is what I love to do. It's my life, pruning, and I love it. And just sometimes you're like, well, after 25 years, maybe I don't have to be there all the time. Well, I paid for it that way, and but it's not so bad. I mean, that's me being extremely hard on myself.
Your worst pruning is my best pruning.
And then this spring, I decided I was going to make the sprayer better. And I've got this really, really complicated sprayer, and I won't go into the details, but I tried to make the spraying more efficient and less apt to blocking, which is so when the spray nozzles block. And I'd used a system on an old sprayer a long time ago. I said, let me put this on the new sprayer. So I invested in these pre-filters to go on every nozzle, and I use like 24 nozzles when I spray. So I tested it on like some stuff and some fertilizer and a little bit of copper here in the spring. I said, it's perfect. It's working fine. I was calculating the volumes. Everything was going fine. And then the most important spray, well, I added some sulfur to the mixes, which what we just do. It's just, copper sulfur mixes, it's very, very common. I've been doing it all my life. But I hadn't tested it that. So I thought that I was free because I'd done 3 sprays of the vineyard and it was perfect. I put the sulfur in. The sulfur is like, it stays in suspension. It doesn't dissolve. It's something, it kind of becomes a little, it's very physical. And those pre-filters blocked. And I noticed it while I was spraying. And it was like the most important spray. Like it was like June 15th or something. And we'd had a really wet spring. And there were certain signs that were coming out that the mildew was going to be pretty intense. And I did it. And I started when I started in the vineyard, everything's going well because the pre-filters weren't blocked. So, the right volume went out. And then I got to the end and I looked at the volume in the sprayer, which we do all the time just to make sure everything's going well. It's like, something's slowing down. So I checked the main elements that, there are other filters and stuff and pressure and everything, made sure everything was fine. That was fine. I said, okay, that means my filters are spraying, but you can't stop in mid-spray and take out 24 nozzles and pre-nozzles. There's sulfur everywhere, So I just said, well, hey, I'm coming out. I'm spraying at about 30% of what I'm usually spraying. So I'll just go 3 times through the last block and put all the volume on. And so when I did that, I said, well, fine, I got it done. Yeah, I witnessed the problem. There is a problem. I'll fix the problem, but I think it's okay. And I went back a week later after rain, and the downy mildew had just gone nuts. I'd never seen it that early and that hard. In a small block. I mean, the vineyard is actually today, right now, beautiful. It's a beautiful season, knock on wood, as Dave just did. But there was just 2 little things that I did that it was all in the spirit of going forward. It wasn't laziness. It was just trying to do better. That's the risk of trying to change things and try and moving forward. And I paid for them. I was tired. As I mentioned, there were a couple of other things in my life. My dad's passing away, this, that, coming face to face, midlife crisis. I don't know. I wasn't very happy at the beginning of July. I thought it was the worst season ever. I was like, okay, I'm done with this. And then, and then I had a few good nights sleep, realized, that it's the best life I could ever have is, doing what we do at Les Pervenches. So yeah, I got some good night's sleep and, well, chatted about it with my family and everything. And then I got through that and took care of myself and then looked at the vineyard. And now I'm just walking through there and I'm so excited about what we're seeing and starting to really get excited about the harvest. And so yeah, no, it's turned into be a great year, but it's amazing in farming how you can, I guess in anything, you can put so much stress on yourself and be tired, if you don't take care of yourself and get the sleep you need and organize your life, so that you're not, overdoing it. And then, yeah, sometimes it can hit hard. I mean,
it's a topic that comes up a lot with winemakers. They're always, if you talk to them, they're always talking about, oh, this stressed me out, this stressed me out, this stressed me out. And I started asking all winemakers, what's the thing that stresses you out? And everybody has a different answer.
Yeah, and there's so many little nuances.
Weather, yeah. It's the sprayer.
It was on July, I don't know what, 2025. Otherwise, I mean, I can talk a lot about stresses and stuff, but
it's a hard life.
We're humans and we have stress.
Well, now people, when they see it, God forbid anybody complains that a bottle of wine is expensive anymore because it's not, this isn't grape. It's, basically it is fermented grape juice, but there's so much behind that.
There's a lot behind it. Yeah. It's just what it is. It's, there are probably easier ways to do it we haven't figured out yet.
Yeah.
You just keep
you're not taking the easy way out. You're taking the hard way out.
Exactly. And that's what we decided to do. So that's our responsibility to deal with it. We decided to grow vinifera in Quebec, do it organically, biodynamically, and not add anything to the wines. Well, I think that does add a lot of stress.
Now you're paying the price.
But there's a lot of satisfaction to it too, and it's so much fun. I love it.
Well,
hey Mike, I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast with me and Lesley.
Oh, thank you. I'm honored to be here.
Thanks, Mike. Great to meet you and to talk about all your trials and tribulations. Yeah, and it's nice to hear that you and now, David, you've learned that you can call Mike and that he's waiting. Nobody's calling him
because it's still over my head a little bit, But it's a pleasure to have you on here today. It's a pleasure to call you a friend. It's a pleasure to to be inspired by you, and so many of us look up to you. And thanks so much for coming out. And give my best to your lovely wife Vero, and let's see about la relève.
All right.
Sometimes when the kids leave, they come back later.
Yeah.
They got to go do their thing for a few years, and maybe she'll show up when she's 28, 29 and saying, you know what? I don't know
You
about
were
San
right,
Francisco
Dad.
and medicine.
Yeah. But she'll say, I want to bring back the oak barrels.
Yeah, I want to make
I do say if she does come back, she can do whatever she wants. So, I mean, I've got to have that attitude.
I hope she hears this podcast. Yes, there you go. I like that. Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Yeah, she'll make cocktails in cans. There you go.
Well, that's it. Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you so much.
No, thank you so much to both of you. It was an honor and a pleasure. A lot of fun. Thank you.
Take care, Mike.
Salt Lick is supported by TNKR Media, our podcasting team. As we get organized and look to the future, finding a media partner that understands us and lets us be true to ourselves is important. Dan and his team at TNKR Media specialize in media projects for experts. Podcasts like this one, but also business writing plans, public relations consulting and coaching, and even public affairs campaigns for Canadians wanting to turn their words into action. Discover how TNKR Media can help experts and their organizations communicate through smart, compelling content. For more, visit tnkr.ca. TNKR Media. Make your own news.
ThinkBait. TNKR Media. Good talk.